In this video, I'm going to show you step by step on how to install these floating shelves. In the description below, I'll put links on how to buy everything off Amazon to complete your project. So follow along, get this project complete, and get it looking good. So people come in and they look at the shelves and go, how are those on the wall? I'm going to be showing you step by step on how to install these floating shelves so you have a successful project. One thing I highly suggest you do, instead of just kind of holding the shelves up in different areas on your walls of where you want to put them, use some blue painter's tape. This 2-inch wide tape is actually just about the same thickness as the shelf as well. And you can go ahead, you don't need to push this stuff onto your painted walls real hard. Just kind of tap it on there. And it's a painter's tape, so it's not going to lift any paint. But you can kind of move it around and get a good feel for what the shelves are going to look like in this space. Then once you get that close, I suggest you take a tape measure, and you can just measure from like the ceiling to the center or the top. Write those numbers down, and then measure from the wall out. Write those numbers down, because just in case the tape falls off, or you could just remove all the tape and then go by those dimensions. So that's the best way that I found how to lay these out on the wall and get a good end result. Now the color that we've chosen is a driftwood finish. Now it's kind of a light gray wood grain finish, and you can get these in multiple lengths. I believe the lengths are 12, 15, 24, and 36 inches long. Now these are the 24-inch long. They're roughly 1.75 inches thick, and for this size of shelf, they're capable of holding 17 pounds. Just remember that the floating shelves, no matter really what size, just be careful with how much weight you put on them. Even a 36-inch one, I think you can hold like 25 pounds, which isn't a whole lot. These floating shelves look awesome. They just don't hold a whole lot of weight. Now total time to put up one of these shelves, especially if it's your first time, you're going to be looking at 35 to 40 minutes. It is very simple, but by the time you get things laid out, you get all the tools out of your toolbox, you get everything done, give yourself a good half hour. Once you've put a couple of these up, I've been able to do them in about 10 minutes. Now if you look on the back of the box, it says 15-minute install. That's pretty accurate after you do your first one. You're going to need a tape measure, screwdriver, level, a drill, and a 3/32 drill bit. Now included in the kit are these drywall anchors. So let's say you put a screw in the stud right here, and your next one, maybe your stud is just not lined up with where that hole needs to be. You can use these drywall anchors. These drywall anchors will support about 55 pounds, so will easily support the shelf. And before I start drilling, I'm just going to show you how this works. This is your wall bracket. This is going to be fastened up to the wall. And then these two rods are going to slide into the holes on the back of this shelf. Shelf's going to slide in like that, flush up against the wall. And then there's two screws to screw the shelf to the bracket, and that's pretty much it. Also, as a quick side note, when you're going to install this, and let's say you're laying out your tape or your lines, you're going by the edge of your shelf. Well, the bracket is 3.5 inches in from the edge of the shelf. So in other words, you don't want to take this bracket and mount it like this, because that's going to offset the shelf, and the shelf is going to wind up like this. So you're going to measure 3.5 inches from here to the end of the tape, which would put the bracket about right there. And then once you slide this on, the shelf will wind up right where you want it. Now you want to pay close attention to this bracket, because right in the middle of the bracket is an arrow that points up, and you want to make sure you're installing the bracket this way. You don't want to install it like this. So with the arrow up, I've got the bracket up here. I know I want to be 2 inches away from here, and this is 3.5 inches from the edge of the shelf. So I do 2 inches plus 3.5 over from the edge of that trim, and then I want to be 13 inches down from the ceiling. So I hold my bracket up, I get my measurements, and then you're going to want to use your level. Once you got it right where you want it, you want to put your level on here. Once you have it level, I just take like a little black Sharpie marker and mark where my drill holes are. So I think you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you have 6 drill holes so you can try to hit a stud. So I just put a little black Sharpie marker where my drill holes are, and then I'm going to find where the studs are and hopefully be able to put a screw into at least 1 stud, if not 2. Otherwise I'll be using the supplied drywall anchors. So now you know where your bracket's going to be. You can take a stud finder. This is a zircon 1-step. It's really easy to find a stud with this. You can slide your stud finder along your wall. Right there is a stud. I'm just going to take a little piece of blue tape. And now I know there's a stud there. So hopefully where your bracket lands, you have one of your holes that will line up with this stud. And then you can screw right into the stud. If that's not going to line up for you, then you just use the drywall anchors. Either way works, but putting a screw into a stud is going to be the best. There's one other option to always make sure you're going to fasten into a stud. So let's hold the bracket up right where I want it. You see I have a stud right here, but there's no hole. I can drill a hole into this bracket with a drill bit and just fasten from here right into a stud. Now there is that option. You're not going to hurt anything by drilling an extra hole or 2 into this bracket to make sure you drill into a stud if you want to be 100% certain that's what you're doing. Like I said before, the drywall fasteners hold about 55 pounds a piece, so they are supportive. But if you want to put a little more weight on the shelf and you want to be certain this is fastened good and solid, always drill into a stud and don't be afraid to drill a hole into that bracket to make sure you do. Alright, so I'm going to be able to fasten to one stud, but I'm going to have to use a drywall anchor for the other. Now here's a tip. I've been using these things for 20 plus years. These have been around forever. Now they say these are self-drilling, which 80% of the time they are. You're going to push these up against your drywall and they'll drill right into it. However, a lot of times, especially if your house is older and the drywall is really solid, maybe you have plaster, maybe you have cal coat, drill about at least an 1/8 inch diameter hole. With a drill bit like this is a hair over 1/8 of an inch. Just drill with this first and then screw this in. Don't over tighten these. You're going to screw it in until this is flush with the drywall. But just in my experience, these things will kind of mash up and not drill properly without a pilot hole. So drill your pilot holes, get your anchors set in, and then we'll move on to getting that bracket mounted. This screw right here is going right into a stud, and then these 2 here are my drywall anchors. I could have easily just done the 2 drywall anchors, but this is in my kids' room, and a lot of times kids, if you tell them, hey, don't put more than 15 pounds on that shelf, they're going to put more on there. So why not go just a little bit extra? Now we're going to go ahead and slide the shelf over these 2 dowel bars. If you take a look at your shelf, the bottom side will have 2 pre-drilled holes. Those are going to go on the bottom. So now it's a little bit tricky to line up those dowel bars with the holes in the back of the shelf. Well, once they get lined up, you just push your shelf straight to the wall. And now we're going to put the 2 screws in here to hold the shelf to the dowel bars. Here's another tip. These small screws that go in the bottom right here, do not use your drill driver to put these in. These will strip out really easy. You just use a normal hand screwdriver to put these in. And they don't do anything to help support weight. The only thing they really do is just keep the shelf in place. So there's really no reason to get these super tight. All you do is snug them up and that's it. Once you have those 2 screws snug, your shelf is complete. We'll go ahead and install the other 2. Get the second shelf bracket in place. Pretty much did the exact same thing as I did on the first one. Have 3 screws holding this up. I'm going to go ahead and slide that second shelf on. And it's a little easier to line this one up because I can see the holes in the back of the shelf. Slide it all the way on. Now we just need to put in those 2 fastening screws. They're just snug, you do not want to strip them. And now shelf number 2 is done. So now we're going to be installing that last shelf, shelf number 3. Shelf number 3 should be in line with shelf number 1, so I already have that dimension. I just need to make sure whatever it is from here to here, I want to make it the same as here to here. So just need to double check a couple of dimensions before I start drilling those holes. All 3 shelves mounted. It's nice and solid, looks great. First, I've mounted these shelves in other parts of the house, but this is the highest shelf I've mounted. And I don't really like that I can see these 2 screws. So I think I'm going to try and flip this over and reattach it from the top side and see if that works. Well, to flip this shelf over, all I did was unscrew it, flip it over, and I put the 2 screws in from the top. So just so you know, these are reversible like that. Like I said, this is the highest shelf I've installed so far. And these other screws down here on the other shelves, you can't see those. So now this looks even better than it did before. There's all hidden fasteners. You don't see anything when you walk into the room. Now all the shelves are securely fastened into place, and we can call this project complete. So if you're following along in this step-by-step video and you did this all yourself, give yourself a pat on the back and a good congratulations. Hope your project turns out well. Hope this video helped you out, and thanks for watching.